What if I told you that a single decision you make could influence the eternal destiny of someone you love's soul? Saint Faustina Kowalska, known as the Apostle of Divine Mercy, received direct revelations from Jesus Christ himself, and what she discovered about cremation, the fate of souls, and salvation could completely change how you view life after death. Prepare yourself, because what you're about to hear might be a turning point in your faith, your conscience, and the choices you make for your loved ones. Very few people know about this specific revelation that came to Saint Faustina in 1936, a vision so shocking that it shook her to her very core. Like a flame that can both warm and burn, our choices about the bodies of our departed loved ones can either liberate or imprison their souls in ways most of us never imagined. This isn't just another spiritual teaching. This is a divine warning wrapped in infinite mercy, a revelation that could save souls for eternity. Saint Faustina was a Polish nun, canonized by the Catholic Church, known worldwide for her diary entries where she recorded messages she claimed to receive directly from Jesus. Her revelations about divine mercy have transformed millions of lives, but this particular vision about cremation remains one of her most profound and disturbing spiritual experiences. What she witnessed in the spiritual realm about the fate of cremated souls will challenge everything you thought you knew about death and the afterlife. Write in the comments, "I want to know the truth," to show that you're prepared for this revelation that could transform eternal destinies. Because once you hear what Saint Faustina saw, once you understand the spiritual consequences of cremation and learn the powerful method Jesus taught her to help these suffering souls, you'll never look at death the same way again. Throughout this message, I'm going to reveal the shocking vision Saint Faustina had in 1936, show you the secret 4-step method that can liberate souls affected by cremation, warn you about 3 grave errors that increase spiritual suffering, and share the unmistakable signs that indicate when a soul has finally found peace. This comes from centuries of mystical tradition and direct divine revelation, knowledge that could literally save souls from prolonged spiritual anguish. The year was 1936, and Saint Faustina was deep in prayer when something unprecedented happened. She was taken in spirit to witness something that would freeze her heart with both terror and compassion. In her mystical experience, she found herself watching as a soul floated above the place where its body was being cremated, and what she heard coming from that soul were words that haunted her for days. "The fire that consumes my body also touches my spiritual essence. I cannot free myself while no part of me finds peace." This vision shook Saint Faustina profoundly. She had seen visions of heaven, purgatory, and hell, but this was different. This was a soul trapped in a state she had never witnessed before. The anguish in that soul's cry for help was unlike anything she had encountered in her extensive mystical experiences. For days afterward, she couldn't shake the image of that suffering soul, suspended between worlds, unable to find the liberation that death should bring. The soul's torment was visible to her spiritual eyes. It writhed in confusion and pain, not understanding why it couldn't move forward into the light. The fire that was reducing its earthly form to ash seemed to create invisible chains that bound the spirit to a state of perpetual unrest. Saint Faustina watched in horror as the soul repeatedly tried to break free from this spiritual prison, only to be pulled back by forces she didn't yet understand. In her diary, Saint Faustina recorded these exact words about her experience. "I saw a soul hovering over the flames, and it cried out in a voice that penetrated my heart, 'Help me.' The fire burns not only my body, but reaches into my very essence. I am bound by invisible chains of suffering." This direct quote from her personal writings shows the profound impact this revelation had on her spiritual understanding. Days later, Jesus himself appeared to Saint Faustina to explain the meaning of that terrifying experience. His voice carried both infinite compassion and grave concern as he revealed one of heaven's most closely guarded secrets. He told her that there exists a mysterious and sacred bond between the body and the soul, a connection that remains even after death, a divine link that most people never consider, but that plays a crucial role in the soul's journey to eternity. When a body is buried in blessed ground, Jesus explained, the soul detaches with greater serenity, finding more easily the eternal peace it seeks. The natural process of returning to the earth allows the soul to complete its earthly journey in harmony with God's design. The body slowly dissolves back into the elements from which it came, and with each stage of this gentle decomposition, the soul finds greater freedom to ascend toward its eternal home. But when the body is cremated, Jesus revealed, this natural and sacred process is violently interrupted. The intense flames that reduce flesh and bone to ash in mere hours create a spiritual shock that reverberates through dimensions we cannot see. The soul, still connected to its earthly vessel through invisible threads of divine creation, experiences this violent destruction as a form of spiritual trauma that can take years or even decades to heal. According to Saint Faustina's diary entry dated March 15, 1936, Jesus told her specifically, the bond between body and soul is sacred and mysterious. When this bond is severed by fire, the soul experiences confusion and must find another path to peace. But my mercy provides a way for those who seek it with sincere hearts. The soul then faces a slower, more difficult, and more painful path toward liberation. It's not that cremation condemns a soul to hell. God's mercy is infinite, and His love knows no bounds. But the practice does create spiritual obstacles that require special divine intervention to overcome. The soul becomes like a bird with injured wings, still capable of flight, but needing extra help to soar to the heights it was meant to reach. This revelation explains why, for centuries, the Catholic Church has always given preference to traditional burial, even when the world couldn't fully understand the reasons why. This guidance isn't merely a matter of human tradition, cultural preference, or outdated customs. It's profound spiritual wisdom revealed through mystical experience and direct divine teaching, knowledge that touches the very core of our existence and eternal destiny. Jesus made it clear to Saint Faustina that how we treat the bodies of our loved ones directly influences their spiritual destiny in ways most people never consider. Today, many families choose cremation for practical, financial, or emotional reasons without knowing the spiritual consequences this decision might bring. But here comes the most important part of this revelation. Jesus didn't share this truth with Saint Faustina to generate fear or condemnation, but to offer hope and provide a solution. He showed Saint Faustina a powerful path of intercession, a divine method that can help souls whose bodies were cremated to find light, rest, and eternal peace. This method has been recorded in Saint Faustina's diaries and has been transforming the spiritual lives of thousands of families around the world. Even more remarkably, this intervention works regardless of how much time has passed since the cremation took place. God's mercy transcends all human limitations of time and space. The first step of this liberation method is to pray the Chaplet of Divine Mercy for 9 consecutive days, always at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, known as the Hour of Mercy. This timing carries profound spiritual significance because it was the exact moment when Jesus died on the cross, pouring out His mercy upon the entire world. During this sacred hour, heaven opens its floodgates of grace, and prayers offered at this time carry extraordinary spiritual power. During each day of this 9-day novena, in addition to the traditional chaplet, a special prayer must be included, a prayer taught directly by Jesus to Saint Faustina specifically for souls affected by cremation. In her diary entry from March 18, 1936, she recorded Jesus teaching her these exact words: "Merciful Jesus, through your sacred wounds, relieve the pain of the soul of name, and lead them to your eternal light. Through your infinite mercy, break the chains that bind this soul, and grant them the peace that was interrupted by fire." Amen. This prayer is extraordinarily effective because it directly invokes Christ's wounds as the source of relief and liberation for the suffering soul. The sacred wounds represent the ultimate sacrifice and the complete victory over death, making them the most powerful spiritual force available for soul liberation. The second step involves celebrating 3 masses of suffrage during the first month after cremation. It's essential that the priest knows the specific intention of these masses, to pray for the liberation of the soul from the spiritual effects of cremation. Jesus explained to Saint Faustina that in these cases, more targeted intercession is necessary because generic prayers, while valuable, may not be sufficient to break through the spiritual obstacles created by the cremation process. The third step requires performing 30 consecutive days of works of mercy. Each act of kindness must be offered in the name of the deceased. These works can include donations to charity, giving alms to the poor, visiting the sick, supporting families in need, or any concrete gesture of compassion toward others. Each of these actions transforms spiritually into a healing balm for the soul, drawing it closer to the divine light and bringing profound consolation to its spiritual wounds. The fourth and final step is, whenever possible, to bury the ashes in blessed ground. Saint Faustina explained that consecrated soil carries a continuous blessing for the soul, helping to restore the sacred bond between body and spirit and facilitating the final liberation. When ashes rest in holy ground, they become connected once again to the divine blessing that flows through consecrated earth, creating a spiritual bridge that helps the soul complete its journey home. Together, these 4 steps form a complete pathway to salvation and liberation. Jesus promised Saint Faustina that when these practices are carried out with genuine faith and love, they bring real and effective relief to suffering souls. The method works because it addresses both the spiritual damage caused by cremation and provides positive spiritual energy to help the soul overcome the obstacles it faces. But perhaps the most beautiful part of this revelation is Jesus' promise that it's never too late to act. Even if the cremation happened many years ago, this method can still be applied with full effectiveness. Saint Faustina recorded cases of souls that found peace decades after their cremation, thanks to the prayers and works of mercy performed by their loving family members who learned about this divine intervention. If you know someone who needs this help, write "I will intercede" in the comments. Your commitment could be the beginning of a soul's liberation from spiritual suffering and the start of their journey toward eternal peace and joy in the presence of God. Jesus assured Saint Faustina that no sincere prayer is ever wasted, and that when we pray with true faith and genuine intention, His mercy reaches even those who departed many years ago. However, Saint Faustina also received a sobering warning about 3 grave errors that many families unknowingly commit. Mistakes that can significantly increase the spiritual suffering of cremated souls and delay their liberation for years or even decades. But be careful. These errors are more common than you might think, and they're often made with the best of intentions by grieving families who simply don't understand the spiritual implications of their choices. What makes these mistakes particularly dangerous is that they appear harmless on the surface, but in the spiritual realm, they create additional barriers that the suffering soul must overcome before finding peace. The first fatal error is keeping the ashes at home, treating them like a decorative object or memorial piece. Many families do this because they want to feel close to their departed loved one, keeping the urn on a mantle, shelf, or in a special room where they can visit and remember. While this intention comes from love, Saint Faustina learned that this practice actually keeps the soul spiritually tethered to the earthly realm, preventing it from completing its journey to eternity. When ashes remain in the family home, the soul becomes confused about its spiritual state. It senses its earthly remains nearby, but cannot understand why it cannot fully return to the physical world or fully depart to the spiritual one. This creates a state of limbo, where the soul feels pulled between two worlds, unable to find rest in either. The home becomes like a spiritual prison, where the soul hovers, waiting for release that cannot come while its remains are treated as a household possession. The second devastating error is scattering the ashes without ecclesiastical blessing, whether in the ocean, rivers, mountains, or releasing them into the wind. Many families choose this option, believing they're giving their loved one freedom or connecting them with nature in a beautiful way. However, Saint Faustina discovered that this practice creates profound spiritual confusion and actually prevents the soul from finding the rest it desperately seeks. When ashes are scattered in multiple locations or dispersed into elements like water or air, the soul experiences what can only be described as spiritual fragmentation. Parts of its earthly connection are spread across vast distances, creating a sense of being torn apart that mirrors the physical scattering. The soul tries to maintain connection with all these scattered pieces, exhausting its spiritual energy and becoming lost in an endless search for wholeness and unity. The third critical error is praying only generic prayers, without the specific intention of relieving the spiritual effects of cremation. While all prayers have value and God hears every sincere petition, Saint Faustina learned that souls affected by cremation require targeted spiritual intervention. Generic prayers for the dead, though beautiful and meaningful, may not address the particular spiritual wounds created by the cremation process. It's like trying to heal a specific injury with general medicine. While general treatment has value, targeted therapy is needed for complete healing. The soul needs prayers that specifically address the trauma of cremation, intercession that acknowledges the unique challenges it faces, and spiritual medicine designed for its particular condition. Without this focused approach, the soul may continue to suffer even while receiving prayers, because those prayers aren't addressing the root of its spiritual distress. These three errors often compound each other, creating multiple layers of spiritual obstacles that the soul must overcome. A family might keep ashes at home for months, then scatter them without blessing, while praying only general prayers for their loved one. Each mistake adds another spiritual barrier, making the soul's journey to peace increasingly difficult and prolonged. The most heartbreaking aspect of these errors is that they're usually made by families who love their departed relatives deeply and want to honor them in the best way possible. But ignorance of spiritual laws doesn't protect us from their consequences, just as ignorance of physical laws doesn't protect us from gravity or fire. This is why Jesus revealed these truths to Saint Faustina, not to condemn loving families, but to educate them so they can make choices that truly help their departed loved ones. However, the most beautiful part of Saint Faustina's revelations concerns the unmistakable signs that indicate when a soul has finally found peace and liberation. These signs can be surprisingly comforting and serve as heaven's way of letting grieving families know that their prayers and efforts have been successful. Saint Faustina described these manifestations as God's mercy made visible, tangible proof that divine intervention has taken place. The signs of liberation follow a specific timeline that Saint Faustina observed across numerous cases. During the first few days of applying the four-step method, many families experience a sudden sensation of serenity, as if an invisible weight has been lifted from their hearts. This isn't just emotional relief from taking action. It's a spiritual phenomenon that occurs when the suffering soul begins to receive the help it desperately needs. Family members often describe this initial sign as feeling like they can finally breathe again after months or years of carrying an unexplained burden. The heaviness that settled over the household after the cremation begins to lift, replaced by a sense of hope and spiritual lightness that seems to come from nowhere. This change is so pronounced that even skeptical family members notice the shift in the home's spiritual atmosphere. Within the first week of intercession, the most remarkable signs begin to appear through dreams and sleep experiences. These aren't ordinary dreams, but what Saint Faustina called spiritual communications, visitations where the departed loved one appears increasingly serene, illuminated, and at peace. In these encounters, the deceased often appears to be thanking their family silently, their faces glowing with gratitude and relief. The progression of these dream visitations is particularly striking. In early dreams, the departed person might appear confused or restless, but as the intercession continues, they become progressively more peaceful and radiant. By the end of the first week, many families report dreams where their loved one appears completely transformed, smiling, surrounded by light, and radiating a joy they never possessed in earthly life. During the second week of applying the method, feelings of guilt and anguish that family members have carried since the cremation begin to dissolve. These emotions are replaced by profound consolation and the growing sense that something monumentally important has been accomplished for their departed loved one. The spiritual burden that family members didn't even realize they were carrying starts to lift, bringing emotional healing alongside the spiritual work being done for the departed soul. At the completion of the 30-day period, many families experience what Saint Faustina called the sign of definitive liberation, a silent but absolute certainty that the soul has found eternal peace. This isn't wishful thinking or emotional projection, but a supernatural knowledge that comes directly from heaven, confirming that the intercession has been successful and the soul has been freed from its spiritual suffering. This final sign often comes with additional supernatural confirmations that validate the family's efforts and God's response to their prayers. There are two particularly moving testimonials that confirm everything Saint Faustina revealed about these signs of liberation. Stories that demonstrate the reality and power of this divine intervention method. Elena from Rome applied the method for her mother, who had been cremated 10 years earlier. During the novena, she began dreaming of her mother with increasing frequency, and each dream showed her more serene than the last. On the final day of the 30-day period, her mother appeared in a dream, smiling radiantly and speaking words Elena will never forget. "My daughter, thank you for freeing me from that prison of confusion. Now I can finally go home to our Father." Elena woke with absolute certainty that her mother had found eternal peace. Giuseppe from Turin performed the complete method for his father, who had been cremated 5 years before Giuseppe learned about Saint Faustina's revelations. During the third week of intercession, Giuseppe experienced the most vivid dream of his life. He saw his father walking through an illuminated garden, his face glowing with joy and gratitude. His father looked directly at him and said, "Son, thank you for helping me escape that spiritual prison. The fire no longer touches my essence. I am free to soar toward the eternal light." Giuseppe awoke with tears of joy, knowing his father had been liberated. These testimonials confirm the central message of Saint Faustina's revelations. God never punishes families who chose cremation out of ignorance or difficult circumstances. His mercy is infinite, His love knows no boundaries, and there is always a path to help our departed loved ones, no matter how much time has passed or what decisions were made in the past. The legacy of Saint Faustina is an invitation for all of us to live with greater spiritual consciousness, deeper faith, and more active compassion. Her diary revelations remind us that death is not the end, but a passage, and that our choices here on earth continue to have profound effects in eternity. Most importantly, her messages assure us that we still possess the power to transform eternal destinies through love, prayer, and works of mercy. True love doesn't end with death. It finds new ways to serve, protect, and liberate those we cherish most. If this message has touched your heart and opened your eyes to spiritual truths you never knew before, please hit that like button to help this message reach other families who desperately need this knowledge. Share this video with anyone who has lost a loved one or might face this decision in the future. You could literally be saving a soul from prolonged spiritual suffering. Subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss revelations that could change your spiritual life forever. In the comments, write "Thank you, Saint Faustina," to show your gratitude for this divine mercy that's been revealed to help our departed loved ones find peace. Like Saint Faustina herself, we can become instruments of divine mercy for those we love most. Remember always, we still have the power to transform eternal destinies through love, prayer, and boundless mercy. God's love never fails. His mercy never ends, and it's never too late to help a soul find its way home to eternal light.